Hi, I'm Terry with 2ubs.com, and in this video I'll be introducing the all-new 0.7, which is Wilier Triestina's latest offering. Their goal with this frame was to go as light as possible without sacrificing anything. So why don't you spend a few minutes with me here as I go into all the technologies that Wilier Triestina invested in to make the 0.7 the ultimate bike. In addition to educating myself in regards to all the technologies that Wilier Triestina invested into the 0.7, I also have put a decent amount of saddle time onto the bike, and I must say, to this second, I am still impressed with this bike. My previous bike was the 101 Superleggera, which I thought was the ultimate, and it couldn't get any better. I loved everything about that bike, from the geometry, the position, the stiffness. It was very light, and I didn't think that really could be improved upon other than making it look a little bit different, but Wilier Triestina certainly went above and beyond as far as taking everything that's good about the Superleggera, the SLR, etc., and going forward. So I'll go into some of the technologies that allow them to accomplish this, and I think you'll find them to be very interesting. Now, the engineers at Wilier Triestina basically worked off of the successful 101 frame here. So it's important to look at the 0.7 not as a whole new frame design, but the next evolution of the 101. Unlike the 101, the engineers decided to go with a unidirectional carbon rather than a 3K weave, and this allows them to incorporate more stiffness and rigidity into the frame. And what's especially important is they used a special film in the manufacturing process of the frame. And this film, it's called Special Elastic Integrated Film. So as far as the carbon layup go, while you might utilize a 60-ton carbon, a very, very high modulus 60-ton carbon, in very important layers of the layup, there's typically intermediate layers of a not very super rigid, stiff carbon, and that allows for frames to be a little bit more compliant and provide the comfort that's necessary in some of the rides. But through using this SEI film, they were able to reduce the number of those intermediate layers. The SEI film basically allows them to use more 60-ton carbon and less of that intermediate carbon, which typically adds weight to the frame. And the nature of the SEI film is it increases basically impact resistance or strength by up to 35%, which reduces the propensity for cracking. It just makes the frame stronger. And what's most noticeable from the rider's perspective is that the vibration dampening is significantly increased. For me, that was the first thing I noticed. Accelerating through rough surfaces on this frame, it feels like you're on a cloud, a very fast cloud at that. Now, some of you may recall, Alessandro Petacchi in 2010 was able to take the sprinter's green jersey in the Tour de France, and his weapon of choice was certainly the 101 Superleggera. As you may know by now, the Wilier bottom bracket is a very stiff unit. They're able to stretch the bottom bracket shell all the way out to basically where the crank arms begin, with the bearing sitting inside the frame. And through this, they're able to basically basically shorten the distance between the bearing and the pedal axle spindle, and that certainly helps as far as stiffness goes. And with the 0.7 here, they're able to take that Wilier bottom bracket stiffness trait there and go one step further by looking at other options out on the industry. Wilier Triestina, obviously they are a fan of BB30, who isn't? But with a typical 68mm bottom bracket shell, they felt that would add more leverage and reduce stiffness. They didn't want to do away with their very wide 86mm bottom bracket shell. So through doing away with an aluminum bottom bracket shell here, saving weight, being able to allow a 30 millimeter spindle to fit in through the use of special bearing cups, they were able to make it even stiffer. And the name here, BB386 Evo, the 3 standing for 30 millimeter spindle, 86 millimeters obviously for their 86 millimeter bottom bracket shell, and basically allowed them to even make the bottom bracket stiffer, ultimately close to a 0% loss in any bottom bracket flex, hence the name 0.7. Now, moving forward to the front end of the 0.7 here, unlike the Cento Uno, which basically had a straight 1 1/8 inch zero tube head tube combination, Wilier Triestina wanted to stiffen the front end of the 0.7. And what they basically went with here is an 1.25 inch at the bottom of the head tube here. And instead of, unlike other manufacturers, going to 1.5 inches, they did 1.25 up to 1.8 inches. And the reason for this is Wilier Triestina did not want to make the ride or compromise the ride quality of the bike. They felt that 1.5 inches was a little bit too stiff in the front end. And from my personal experience, you know, I like a little bit of give there. I typically get a little bit more feedback from the front end if there is a little bit of give, and I get a better sense of front end bite when I'm turning into corners. So that's another update here that the 0.7 received from the Cento Uno. Now the 0.7 is basically, its construction here, it's made out of 3 main pieces. You have the front triangle, and here in the back of the frame you have 2 separate basically integrated swing arms. Which basically can join the seat stay and the chain stay as one integrated unit with an integrated dropout. And the reason why Wilier Triestina did this, and this comes from the Cento Uno, the reason for this is they wanted to preserve stiffness and also didn't want to sacrifice ride quality. And the way that they're basically able to deflect impacts in the back end here. And furthermore, it is asymmetrical in its design here, and the reason for that is they wanted to basically reinforce the portions or the parts of the frame here in the back that receive the drivetrain loads here from the chain here on the drive side. And some of the other new changes to the 0.7 from the Cento Uno. Here are the cables are externally routed, and the reason for this was to accomplish that sub 799 gram weight that Wilier Triestina wanted to accomplish. So having them on the outside saves weight. Furthermore, from a servicing standpoint, this is a race-bred frame here. It makes servicing a little bit easier here on the spot for the teams racing. Also, the seat post is a telescoping 31.6 millimeter seat post, and what's also very important is that every 0.7 frame set has a verified and certified weight associated with it. So that's certainly reassuring to know here with all the varying manufactured claim weights that you see these days in the industry. Well, that concludes our review of Wilier Triestina's 0.7. Should you have any further questions about this bike, don't hesitate to contact us, info@twohubs.com. Other than that, we look forward to seeing you out on the road. Make sure you enjoy the ride.